compliance and enforcement pose additional challenges for U.S. companies operating internationally. Navigating the complex web of export regulations to ensure that dual-use items are not inadvertently exported to unauthorized entities or regions requires robust compliance programs and thorough due diligence. There is also the risk of legal repercussions for companies that fail to adhere to these export control laws, including fines, sanctions, and reputational damage. Operational adjustments, such as implementing technologies to track and manage the flow of sensitive materials and technologies, become necessary to comply with these stringent regulations. Uncertain enforcement scope. While China's export control law enacted in 2020 laid the foundation for these measures, experts remain uncertain about the extent of Beijing's enforcement of its extraterritorial provisions. According to Combs, the primary immediate goal may be to prevent Chinese firms from masking exports and to deter intermediary countries from assisting U.S. companies in circumventing direct bans. However, the potential for broader enforcement cannot be dismissed. Comparisons to U.S. policy. Commentators have drawn parallels between China's newly expanded rules and the long-standing U.S. extraterritorial export controls, particularly those regulating sensitive technologies. Although Beijing may lack the same enforcement network and compliance infrastructure as Washington, these measures represent its most direct attempt yet to emulate and counteract extraterritorial restrictions imposed by the U.S. and its allies. Russia-China alliance effect. Russia's increasing economic and political alignment with China can potentially strengthen Beijing's strategic position amid ongoing trade tensions with the United States. While China and the U.S. remain deeply interconnected economically, the trade war and Washington's heightened scrutiny of Chinese technology and investment have driven Beijing to seek alternative partners and reduce reliance on American markets and components. Closer Sino-Russian ties serve several key functions in this regard. Energy security and resource diversification. One of China's primary vulnerabilities in a prolonged trade conflict is its dependence on global supply chains, especially for essential commodities and resources. Closer alignment with Russia helps mitigate this risk. Russia is a major exporter of oil, natural gas, metals, timber, and other raw materials crucial to China's manufacturing ecosystem. For example, the Power of Siberia pipeline, inaugurated in late 2019, has enhanced China's long-term energy security by ensuring a stable gas supply. As the U.S. attempts to limit China's influence or restrict critical technology exports, having a reliable, politically aligned partner like Russia for fundamental inputs reduces the pressure on China's industrial base and makes external attempts to hinder its economic growth less effective. While the U.S. has sought to impede China's advancement in high-tech sectors through export controls on semiconductors and restrictions on firms like Huawei, Russia can assist China in developing indigenous capabilities. Although Russia's technology sector lags behind the U.S. and certain European nations in many areas, it has strengths in defense, aerospace, cybersecurity, and certain advanced materials. Joint research and development initiatives, along with the sharing of technical expertise, can help China decrease its dependence on U.S. inputs. Over time, this can weaken the U.S. leverage that comes from controlling cutting-edge technologies and standards, agricultural exports, such as soybeans and pork. By late 2019, the U.S. had expanded tariffs to cover $550 billion in Chinese imports, encompassing a wide range of consumer products like electronics, textiles, and toys. China, in turn, levied tariffs on $185 billion worth of U.S. exports. These reciprocal measures increased operational costs for American companies relying on imported materials, often passing these expenses to consumers through higher prices on everyday goods. China's counteractions significantly impacted U.S. agriculture. American soybean producers, for example, saw their sales to China plummet as Beijing turned to alternative sources, notably Brazil. To mitigate these setbacks, the U.S. government provided over $28 billion in aid to farmers between 2018 and 2020. Multiple economic analyses revealed that U.S. consumers and businesses bore most of the tariff-related costs. For instance, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York estimated in 2019 that tariffs added an annual expense of approximately $831 to each American household. Simultaneously, China's exports to the U.S. declined in critical sectors like machinery and electronics, prompting Beijing to diversify its export destinations and boost domestic consumption. After 2 years of escalating tensions, the US and China formalized the Phase 1 trade agreement in January 2020. Under this deal, China committed to purchasing an additional $200 billion worth of US goods and services above 2017 levels, including specific targets for manufactured products, agricultural commodities, and energy resources. Beijing also pledged to address concerns related to intellectual property rights and cease forced technology transfers. In return, Washington shelved planned tariff hikes and reduced some existing duties. However, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted global trade patterns, and by the end of 2021, China had fulfilled only about 60% of its purchase commitments. Furthermore, ongoing issues such as state-sponsored subsidies and industrial policies remained unresolved. China's newly implemented extraterritorial export controls signify a major escalation in the tit-for-tat trade and technology disputes between Beijing and Washington. By establishing that foreign entities can be held liable for selling Chinese-origin goods to the U.S., China introduces new levels of uncertainty and complexity into global supply chains. While the long-term consequences are yet to be fully realized, this move indicates that Beijing is prepared to leverage its control over critical resources and manufacturing capacity to counter U.S. policies, potentially reshaping the framework of international trade for years to come. Strengthening ties with Russia positions China to more effectively manage and potentially withstand a prolonged trade war with the U.S. by securing a stable flow of essential resources, exploring technological cooperation, diversifying financial mechanisms, and gaining diplomatic support. China can reduce its vulnerabilities and enhance its long-term strategic resilience. Although Sino-Russian cooperation will not eliminate all challenges posed by U.S. trade policies, it provides Beijing with vital tools and leverage that mitigate the impact of American pressure. Over time, this alliance could alter the global economic landscape, making it more difficult for the U.S. to use trade as a unilateral policy instrument and ensuring that China remains a formidable global player.